Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantasy epic review. And today, in this video, we are going to be discussing, in a spoiler-free manner, The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. Durfee? And a couple quick side notes that I'm going to be changing for the future of book reviews here. One, from now on, when I talk about spoilers for a book review, you're going to hear this soundbite, because apparently me saying, hey, spoilers, and also having a spoiler warning on the screen is not enough for a lot of people, and they need some other form of reminder. So I'm just going to add a second audio cue of Navi screaming at you saying, hey, we're going to get into spoilers now. So this means spoilers coming. That doesn't really affect this video though, because this book has not blown up in a way where I feel it's necessary to discuss spoilers, but we are going to be doing that from here on out. And the last thing before we get into the meat of the review, thank you so much for r/fantasy for my Stabby Award. This is so cool. I have a little knife now with my name on it that's congratulating me from r/fantasy, and I'll probably be doing a review of various fantasy subreddits soon, which I'm really looking forward to. Don't worry about me waving this around. It's extraordinarily dull. Like, I cannot hurt myself with this at all. Just want to make that clear, set the example for the kids that you shouldn't be waving knives around your face. I would never. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and start discussing The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. That's how I'm going to say it from now on. I hope you enjoy that. I think by every conceivable definition, this is epic fantasy. It's one written on the cover that they are trying to classify it as that, but if you can't tell, there is quite the bit of information to get through. And Brian seems to have used his first book in his series to largely put great effort into setting up his world. And if I had to take an educated guess, I would say from here, the narrative will be a lot more story focused, but let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons of having your first book in your series be so devoted to setup and world building. There are going to be people who are immediately turned on or off by what I just said. A lot of big epic fantasy fans, like myself, who are big Wheel of Time nerds, Malazan nerds, A Song of Ice and Fire nerds, like those big, thick chunker boys, we will be intrigued by hearing that. We love some setup. We want to have this vast canvas painted for us, and Brian certainly did that here. He also did it in a very interesting style. Pinning this book down is difficult. It's actually part of the reason why I actually just finally got to my modern versus classic fantasy video, because I wanted to clarify, this book here pulls inspiration, it feels like, to me, from all over the place. It would be a disservice to say this is just writing in a modern blended with classic fashion. It is, but he's pulling from various times in fantasy, in my opinion. I mean, I'm seeing prose that harken back, and then he's jumping up to the modern, really trendy, here is how we're writing characters now, especially with the more grim, dark tones that are in place. And then his world building is the most grand, epic you'll see in like that fashion, where he's just hammering in more and more, trying to just build this empire, metaphorically speaking, to have the readers enjoy. And it's really appreciated in that aspect for me. I love an author who's willing to spend the time and effort to craft a world this large. It's not an easy task. And as stylistic as this cover is, it definitely matches what's inside. This is going to be a smoothie of fantasy for people. It's a very odd amalgamation of tastes, and that's a compliment. I would rather come across a book like this a million times over that is doing something a bit different than just another generic crap out from an author that feels like it's just doing what's trendy, and that's really positive, but I have some severe criticisms as well. Mr. Durfee here needs to work on his delivery of information a little bit. That, blended with what he is doing in this first book, can make it a hard pill to swallow at times. There is exposition dump on exposition dump and a lot of repetition of certain things he really wants to hammer home. That's why I got green for the positive and tinges of red, because I liked most. Some things really bothered me though. I found myself fighting my eyes from glazing over with some of these huge paragraphs Brian has put in here that just go over information or extremely descriptive and often repeating information we've seen before. Something that I'm usually very forgiving on, but for some reason just grated me in this book. I think because of its very luscious style of delivery on top of the repetition just made it a bit arduous to get through. And most disappointingly for me, that really affected the lore. I liked the lore that was being built for this world. It was very intriguing, this idea of false religion versus these religious zealots over here. There's all kinds of political intrigue and so much tension in this setting. It feels like something's about to snap and we, the reader, are on the cusp of something truly epic. I mean, that word applies here so well, but it's undercut by that criticism I just said before, where we are just getting stuff hammered home to the point where it's like, the nail's in, stop, it's done. The nail's here. I don't need to hear this again. And the prose here will be controversial as well. I liked them. There is so much effort put into making this book beautiful to read if you really enjoy a nice, well-developed prose style. If you are someone who looks for that, you're going to absolutely enjoy Brian's effort into making this something that is beautiful to read. I would say if you fall into that lane, this could be an 8 out of 10 for you, something you definitely can point to as an example of the writing style you enjoy. But if it's not, the descriptions combined with those prose are probably going to be a big turnoff. There's almost like a high bar to entry for this book, and it's just, I can see people watching my review right now going, well, I don't mind flowery prose, I don't mind longer descriptions, and everything else you've said sounds really awesome. You're not wrong. There is so much in this book I really liked, and I'm definitely compelled to pick up book 2. The characters across the board were fairly engaging. Unfortunately, the least engaging was the main character, Nail. I think that's how you're saying his name. I found him to be a bit whiny and almost picked on in a way by other characters, where I kept thinking, like, I shouldn't enjoy that they're picking on him, but I am. Nearly every other character, though, had me fully engaged in them. I really liked them, and one character in particular, whose name I believe is pronounced Jendralin. I don't know. The pronunciations here are going to be killer for a dyslexic like me, but she was my favorite. But if we're going to go ahead and continue with numbered ratings here, I would go ahead and say that characterization here is going to be solidly for people like a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. There's really quite a lot to like. There are definitely some criticisms that could be had, but overall, I see people really becoming invested in the characters of this story. Now, the world itself, not necessarily the lore, but what's being built, you have to give respect to here for a numbered rating, and I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be like an 8 again out of 10. And I'd say the potential is even there for it to climb higher, and jumping from an 8 to anything higher is not an easy feat, but I could definitely see it being accomplished. And what needs to happen for that to be accomplished is actually less focus on the world building and more focused on the characters existing, on what the time and effort has been spent to craft. This is actually a criticism I've had of Malazan's world building, where you spend all this time constructing and no time living in. And I'm really hoping book 2, which I hope I'm pointing directly at, will do that. And from what I've seen on Goodreads and the sudden spike in the overall rating, that might be the case. If I had to give a message directly to the author, I would say the number one thing you need to work on is delivery of information. If you really solidly sand that down to a point where it's more digestible and keep your prose style, suddenly the bar to entry of this series will go down and you'll have a much wider potential audience. I still overall really enjoyed this book. I'm going to give it a strong 7 out of 10. It's well crafted, there's so much to dig into, and I'm an epic fantasy guy. I just have to be careful to construct this review to the point where I know a lot of people in my audience don't love these huge, thick, chunky books, and their criticisms are going to be valid because this is not the smoothest ride of all time. In summation, epic fantasy always asks a large investment of its reader. It takes time and energy to really immerse yourself in an epic fantasy world due to the inherent nature of the style of the writing. While the first book, the first entry in the Five Warrior Angels, which is the series this takes place in, was not the smoothest of all time, the overall execution from the author, though, was grand enough where, 1, I think this book is still overall enjoyable and worth picking up, and 2, because so much is gotten out of the way here at the beginning, these subsequent books have a lot of room to breathe, and that is what I'll be looking for from here. Everything's established, great, made this book slightly hard to get through, but I understand why you'd have that approach. A lot of epic fantasies do, and now I have a higher bar for the sequels to actually really let me breathe in this world. A big okay, let's have the story be told in the world that has had so much effort put into it. And a completely shallow and not a substantive criticism of this book, but one I have to put out, is the cover art is absolutely gorgeous. Richard Anderson did it, who also did Kings of the Wild, and I am quickly becoming a mega fan of his work. It has personality. He's able to maintain a consistent theme where you can tell, oh, this is probably from this person, while being different enough with each art I've seen from him to not be repetitive. So Richard Anderson, I'm a fan of you. And Brian, I'd say I'm definitely a fan of you as well. I have my criticisms, but overall, this is a solid base for a something special series to grow from. It's just that delivery that needs a little bit of polishing. But anyway, guys, let me know if you are interested in picking up The Forgetting Moon in the comments down below. Of course, I'll have a link to purchase it in the description, or if you've already read it, let me know what you think of the book, and please mark spoilers if you have any. Like and subscribe, everybody, if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.